Looking for some help starting your ranger? Well, you've come to the right place. I'll go over my guide level by level, setting up the core of my ranger build, and I'll give options throughout for both single target and AOE. This is mostly focusing on solo content because you can't always bank on finding a group, but the skills I go over work very well in group play too. So jumping right in, at level 2, we pick up Enhance Armament Weight. This slows our enemies by applying snared to them, and it's very important to note that our finishers and extended finishers apply snared, but so does Barrage and Scattershot. So it's vital to make sure we're finishing our weapon combos on the Ranger to make sure we're applying as many stacks of our weapon enhancements as possible, because it only applies on the final hit of your normal weapon combo or the final 2 hits once you have extended finishers and Barrage and Scattershot. At level 3, we pick up Scattershot. I like the versatility of Scattershot over Headshot because Scattershot is useful if you're fighting multiple targets, and most targets this level don't have enough health for you to fully benefit from Headshot, because a lot of the damage, if your targets are low on health, will just be overkill damage anyways. Scattershot also benefits really well from our level 1 passive, Weapon Mastery Bows, because every time we do a weapon combo finisher, we get 3 seconds taken off our Scattershot and Barrage cooldowns. The other big benefit of Scattershot is that it applies another stack of our armament enhancement, which right now is applying snared. So you can immediately put 2 stacks of snared on your target, slowing your enemy by 50% by just using Barrage and following with Scattershot. At level 4, I take Concentrated Scattershot. So now your Scattershot does just about as much damage, if not more damage, than your Headshot, depending if you have the upgrade for it, and it passes through targets, meaning if you have multiple targets close to each other or lined up in a row, your Concentrated Scattershot is basically a headshot on all of those targets. And you don't have to rely on your targets being below 50% health to maximize your damage the way you do with Headshot. And you still gain full benefit of all the other things we talked about earlier, including applying your weapon enhancement on all of those targets you hit, as well as your weapon finishers reducing the cooldown of your Concentrated Scattershot. When you use it though, you do want to make sure to hold down your Scattershot hotkey all the way until it goes off, because if you accidentally release it even a split second too soon, it'll just fire like a normal Scattershot instead of the Concentrated Scattershot. So don't release the key until the Concentrated Scattershot fires on its own. Another thing I do have to mention about Scattershot, as well as the concentrated version, is that if you're standing on uneven or hilly terrain, and you're standing below your target, like significantly below them, or significantly above them, your Concentrated Scattershot doesn't really follow the terrain. It just flies out straight from you. So you can see here, it didn't hit my target because it's above me. So you have to be careful with that and try to stand on even ground with your target. Or if you're below your enemy, you can jump at the end of your Scattershot, of your Concentrated Scattershot, to line yourself up, but it's easiest to just stand on even terrain with whatever it is you're fighting. I'm assuming this is a bug that they'll hopefully fix at some point in the future, but we'll see. At level 5, I like to go for Multi-Scattershot. This is already our big damage ability, and this upgrade gives us a second charge on a separate cooldown, which is huge. So this Scattershot plus its 2 upgrades is pretty much the core of really single target or AOE builds. At 6, we gain access to this middle tier of skills. This opens up a couple of options. We can go for an AOE build by taking Vine Field and keeping points in Scattershot as well as Multi-Scattershot. And if we want to go for a single target build, we can continue with the skills we have and put our new point into either Thundering Shot or Snipe. If we choose Thundering Shot, we would want to always follow that up with Barrage, because Thundering Shot applies Shocked, which deals extra damage for each incoming direct attack. This obviously combos nicely with Barrage because of all the arrows we're launching at our target. If we instead go for Snipe, not only do we deal a huge amount of damage from the skill itself, but it also applies Shaken, which reduces our target's physical mitigation by 15%. It also turns our bleed effects on the target into hemorrhaging, greatly increasing that damage over time, but I mostly just use Snipe at the start of a fight when I'm soloing because it locks you in place while it's casting and has a long cast time, so I don't usually use this once I'm already fighting an enemy. For solo grinding, I prefer to take Snipe at level 6, but it's up to you. At level 7, I switch from Snipe to pick up Vinefield and Ensnaring Vinefield. This makes it so that the targets are still slowed after the Vinefield route ends, and this makes kiting your enemies, especially when you're killing a big group of them, much easier. If you're just sticking to single target, you can instead keep Snipe and either add in Vinefield without its upgrade, or go with Thundering Shot. Vinefield also has the added benefit, kind of like Snipe, of turning our bleeds into hemorrhaging. And this will be especially important at our next level, which leads me to level 8. I respec to Scattershot with both upgrades, Disengage, which is mostly just to get us to the next tier of abilities, but it also does give us some extra mobility, Enhance Armament Barbs, Vinefield, and Ensnaring Vinefield. So for most non-elite monsters, I don't really need the constant slowing from the snare on Enhance Armament weight, and the extra damage from Barbs helps reduce our kill times significantly. So that leads me into what I was talking about earlier. So when we apply Bleed first with Scattershot, and then root everything in place with Vinefield, Vinefield then takes all the bleeding that we applied with Scattershot and Barbs, and turns it into hemorrhaging, which is significantly more damage since it applies damage every half second over 5 seconds, meaning it does 10 ticks of damage, instead of bleeding, which only does 1 tick per second for a total of 6 ticks of damage. It's also, I think, slightly higher percentage damage too. And also, since we're not applying snared from our armament anymore, I like to change my sword deadly finisher from bleeding to snare, since we're already applying bleeding with our Scattershot with Barbs. So adding snare here helps me slow down some stragglers at the end. There's usually like 1 or 2 mobs left alive, and so that helps me just kite them out and finish the fight. At level 9, I add Snipe back in as our opening single target ability, or you can go with Hunt of the Raven for AOE grinding. I was having some trouble around this level finding AOE spots that weren't packed with other players. It seems like everyone's kind of figuring out the good AOE grinding spots by now, and so I started focusing more on the single target side. Both options work, it just depends on what's available when you're playing. At level 10, I usually go with Thundering Shot. If we combine this with Barrage, we're getting about 70 extra damage just from triggering the stacks of Shocked, and then add that to the damage from the shot itself, and I think it outweighs the extra penetration from Hunt of the Raven pretty significantly. You can also go for Hunt of the Bear if you feel like you're taking too much damage. Hunt of the Tiger doesn't seem particularly worth it at this stage because it only increases our critical damage by an additional 10%. And our critical chance is fairly low since we're still early on in the game with just maybe 1 or 2 blues and greens and the rest just white gear, and sometimes just no gear at all. There's a lot of times where I don't have anything in some of my gear slots at this level. And at level 11, I was grinding the teleporting flower mobs, so I respec to Scattershot with both upgrades, Headshot with Mortal Headshot, Barbs, Snipe with both upgrades, and Thundering Shot. This gives a ton of single target damage, but you do lose the mobility of Disengage and the root from Vinefield. The reason I went with this was because these particular monsters can blink onto you, meaning any gap you create with Disengage or Vinefield will immediately disappear, so there's more value in killing them as quickly as possible. And one cool thing about the attack speed boost you get from Snipe is that it also applies to your ability casts, like the time it takes to charge up your concentrated Scattershot, for instance. And at level 12, we get access to our top tier of abilities. With my single target focus build, I go with Mark of the Raven. This ability gives us an insane boost of damage when our target is low on health. It seems like the breakpoint is around 20% to start dealing a significant amount of damage, and 10% is about where that damage maxes out. So I recorded this at level 13 because I forgot to get a clip at 12, but I'll just leave 1 point unspent. And if you watch for the little number here to the left, you can see how much damage our Mark of the Raven is doing when we combine it with Barrage. It does even more when you add Thundering Strike in first, but just to demonstrate the mark, I'll only do Mark of the Raven plus Barrage once the target gets to about 20% health. And at level 13, I add Vine Field back in. This gives us a little more kiting potential depending on what we're fighting, but it also does a decent amount of damage in its own right and turns our bleeding into hemorrhaging. And to give you an idea of what an AOE build here would look like, I have Scattershot with both upgrades, Disengage, Barbs, Vine Field with upgrade, Lightning Reload, Thundering Shot with upgrade, Raining Death, and Airstrike. To be honest, this AOE build I think is a lot more fun to play than the single target build, but like I said, it really does depend on what's available at the times that you're playing. So to start off, I aggro everything and hit it with a concentrated scatter shot as they're all coming in, then Vine Field when they're all together, Thundering Shot, Raining Death, Scatter Shot again, Lightning Reload to get another scatter in, Airstrike, and then clean up with Scatter and Barrage. One quick thing to mention about Raining Death is that it does its damage in a cone in front of you, and even though it looks like the arrows will only hit targets that are about 20 meters away, it actually hits everything in the cone, even mobs that are standing in melee range of you. And that pretty much covers the core of your single target and AOE builds on the Ranger. One thing I wanted to mention also is that the mark abilities share cooldowns with other mark abilities, so you can't stack them or even alternate marks on each pole, unfortunately. The hunts also share a cooldown, but it's much lower at only 2 seconds, so you are actually able to switch back and forth during a fight if you want to. I played around with using Hunt of the Bear while gathering enemies to reduce how much damage I'm taking, and then switched to Hunt of the Raven when I actually started my combo, but it didn't feel like it was too impactful when compared to some of the other abilities I was giving up. Anyways, I hope this helps someone out there as they're leveling their Ranger, and if you like this video, I've got some guides on the other archetypes that you can check out here. And if you don't mind subscribing, that would be awesome. It's free, and it really helps me get my videos out to more people. Thanks, and I'll see you all next time.